The crystal towers of Velkar Prime stretched toward the twin suns like frozen lightning. Princess Zarathil stood on her balcony, watching the small Earthship land in the palace courtyard. The human delegation had finally arrived for the peace talks. Though she wondered why her father bothered with such a primitive species, the Velkari had ruled a dozen star systems for 3,000 years. Their telepathic abilities and crystal technology made them one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Humans had barely left their home planet 50 years ago. They were like children playing with toys compared to her people's achievements. Zarathil's skin shimmered with the pale blue patterns that marked her royal bloodline. Her large silver eyes tracked the humans as they emerged from their crude metal ship. They moved awkwardly in the higher gravity, their soft faces showing strain behind their breathing masks. "Look at them," said Kethran, her advisor, stepping beside her. His mental voice carried amusement into her mind. "They can barely walk properly. Father's wisdom in using them as a buffer against the Kreth is clear. Who would bother conquering such weak creatures?" Zarathil nodded, but something caught her attention. One of the humans moved differently than the others. While his companions stumbled and looked around nervously, this one walked with careful, measured steps. He paused to examine a flowering crystal tree, tilting his head with genuine curiosity rather than fear. "That one is different," she said aloud. "The tall one with dark hair? He is their chief diplomat, I believe. Marcus Chen. Intelligence reports say he was some kind of researcher before joining their diplomatic corps." The human delegation was led into the palace by her father's guards. Zarathil felt the familiar weight of formal court approaching. The negotiations would be tedious. Humans wanted protection from the aggressive Kreth hegemony. The Velkari would agree, but only because human space would serve as a convenient barrier between them and their enemies. 3 hours later, Zarathil sat through the opening ceremony in the Hall of Crystals. The massive chamber amplified telepathic communication, filling the air with a soft harmonic hum. She watched the human delegates struggle with the formal protocols. Most of them looked overwhelmed by the soaring architecture and the gentle pressure of thousands of minds touching theirs. Marcus Chen was different. He sat quietly, his brown eyes taking in everything with calm attention. When Emperor Thander addressed the delegation telepathically, the other humans winced at the unfamiliar sensation. Marcus simply closed his eyes and listened, as if he was trying to understand not just the words, but the feeling behind them. "Your people seek our protection." The Emperor's mental voice carried formal courtesy and barely hidden condescension. "We are willing to discuss terms." The human ambassador, a nervous woman named Dr. Reeves, spoke aloud. "Your Majesty, we are honored by your consideration. We offer trade agreements and technological exchange in return for mutual defense treaties." Thunderous amusement rippled through the hall. What technology could humans possibly offer that would interest the Velkari? But he maintained diplomatic politeness. "We shall consider all proposals carefully." After the formal session ended, Zarathil found herself curious about the quiet human diplomat. Protocol allowed for informal meetings during the week-long negotiations. She decided to visit the guest quarters. She found Marcus Chen in the palace gardens, kneeling beside a small patch of earth where someone had planted unfamiliar seeds. He looked up as she approached, and she was struck by the gentleness in his expression. "Princess," he said, attempting a Velkari greeting bow. His pronunciation was terrible, but the effort was genuine. "I hope you don't mind. I brought some seeds from Earth. I thought they might grow here, if given a chance." "What are they?" she asked, switching to the human language called English. She had studied it as part of her education. "Sunflowers," he said, his face lighting up. "They're simple flowers, but they always turn to follow the sun. I thought they might like your twin stars." Zarathil knelt beside him. Up close, she could see the care with which he had prepared the soil. mixing it with nutrients he must have brought from his ship. "You know about plants?" "I studied xenobotany before I became a diplomat," Marcus said. "Life finds a way to adapt, no matter where it goes." "I believe that includes people too." Something in his voice made her look at him more carefully. There was a depth to his words that seemed to carry more meaning than their simple content. But when she tried to touch his mind lightly with her telepathy, she felt only warmth and genuine interest in the conversation. Over the next few days, Zarthil found herself visiting the gardens regularly. Marcus was always there, tending to his small earth plants or reading from a book of human poetry. He asked thoughtful questions about Velkari culture and listened to her answers with complete attention. "Why did you really come here?" she asked him one evening as they watched the twin suns set. "For peace," he said simply. "My people have seen what war can do. We'd rather grow things than destroy them." The sincerity in his voice touched something in her heart. Here was a being from a supposedly primitive species who seemed to understand truths that many of her own people had forgotten. When she reached out with her telepathy, she felt no deception, no hidden agenda. Just a deep well of kindness and a genuine desire for understanding. The formal negotiations concluded successfully. The Valkyrie agreed to provide military support against Kreth aggression in exchange for strategic positioning and trade rights. It was exactly what Emperor Thander had planned from the beginning, but something unexpected had happened. On the final night of the delegation's stay, Marcus asked to speak with her privately. "I know this is presumptuous," he said, his hands nervous as they stood in a moonlit garden. "But I would like to request permission to stay, to serve as a permanent cultural liaison between our peoples." "Why?" she asked, though her heart already knew the answer. "Because I've found something here worth protecting," he said, meeting her silver eyes with his brown ones. "If you'll have me." Zarthil felt the truth of his words through their brief mental connection. This strange, gentle human from a primitive world had somehow touched her soul. Against all logic and protocol, she found herself nodding. "I'll speak to my father," she whispered. Marcus smiled. And in that moment, Zarthil believed she had found the most harmless, peaceful being in the entire galaxy. She could not have been more wrong about what lay beneath his gentle surface. 5 years had passed since Marcus Chun first planted the sunflowers in the palace, gardens of Velkar Prime. Now those gardens bloomed with dozens of earth species, carefully tended alongside native Velkari crystal flowers. The site had become a symbol throughout the empire of the growing friendship between their peoples. Zarthil placed her hand on her rounded belly as she walked through the gardens in the early morning light. Their child moved gently inside her, a miracle that had amazed scientists from both species. The genetic compatibility between humans and Velkari had been considered impossible until their love proved otherwise. "Good morning, my star," Marcus said, looking up from where he was transplanting seedlings. His Valkyrie had become fluent over the years, though he still spoke with a slight accent that she found charming. Dirt streaked his simple work clothes, and his dark hair showed the first touches of silver. "The little one is active today," Zarthil said, settling onto a stone bench nearby. "I think they inherit your restless nature." Marcus wiped his hands and came to sit beside her, placing his palm gently over hers on her belly. Through their bond, she felt his quiet joy and wonder at the life they had created together. It was the same gentle presence she had sensed that first day in the gardens, warm and steady as sunlight. "Have you thought more about names?" he asked. "I like Kaivan for a boy, Marithel for a girl. Both mean bridge between stars in Old Velkari." "Perfect," Marcus said, kissing her forehead. "A bridge between our peoples." Emperor Thander appeared on the path, his morning walk bringing him through the gardens as it often did. Over the years, he had grown genuinely fond of his human son-in-law, though he still sometimes shook his head at the strange customs Marcus had brought to court. "Still playing in the dirt, Marcus?" Thander's mental voice carried affectionate amusement. "Learning from it, Majesty," Marcus replied aloud, as was his habit. "Plants teach patience. They grow in their own time, not ours." And how goes your other project?" Marcus had established food distribution centers throughout the capital city, using fast-growing earth crops to supplement the diet of Velkari workers. It was considered unusual for someone of his position to concern himself with such matters, but the people loved him for it. "The harvest stations are producing well. No one in the lower districts goes hungry anymore." Thander nodded approvingly. In 5 years, Marcus had never asked for wealth or position for himself. His requests were always for others. Better working conditions for palace staff, educational programs for children, medical supplies for remote settlements. The emperor had begun consulting him on domestic policy matters, finding his outsider's perspective surprisingly valuable. "Father, you spoil him," Zarathil said with a smile. "Soon he'll think he runs the empire." "Perhaps he should," Thander replied, only half joking. "He understands our people better than most who were born here." After the emperor continued his walk, Marcus returned to his plants while Zarathil watched him work. She marveled at how seamlessly he had adapted to their world. He had learned to use the crystal communication networks, though he preferred speaking aloud. He participated in philosophical debates with court scholars, always asking questions rather than claiming expertise. He had even mastered the complex etiquette of formal ceremonies, though he did so with a self-deprecating humor that made everyone around him smile. The only mystery was his past. When others spoke of their families, their youth, their achievements before coming to court, Marcus would listen politely, but rarely shared his own stories. He mentioned studying plants, working as a researcher, serving briefly in his planet's diplomatic corps. When pressed for details, he would deflect with a joke or change the subject so smoothly that most people didn't notice. "Were you happy before you came here?" Zarathil had asked him once, early in their marriage. "I was surviving," he had answered. "Here, I learned what happiness means." She accepted his privacy. Many beings carried painful memories they preferred not to revisit. What mattered was who he was now, the kindest person she had ever known, beloved by everyone from the lowest servant to her own father. Princess Gelda, one of her personal attendants, approached with excitement. "The communication crystal from the outer systems is ready for you." Zarathil's sister, Valene, was stationed at the mining world of Kethmar. They spoke weekly through the crystal networks, sharing news and gossip across the light-years dot in the communication chamber. Valene's image formed in the air above a cluster of resonating crystals. Her mental voice carried clearly across space. "Sister, you grow more beautiful each day. Marriage to your gentle human agrees with you." They spoke of family matters, the progress of Zarathil's pregnancy, political news from across the empire. Valene was always curious about Marcus, whom she had met only briefly. "Does he ever speak of his military service?" Valene asked during one conversation. "What military service?" Zarathil replied, confused. "Oh, perhaps I misunderstood. One of our human trade liaison mentioned that most human diplomats have some military background. Something about their culture valuing service. I assume Marcus would have served as well." Zarathil felt a small flutter of uncertainty. She had never heard Marcus mention any military experience. But then again, he rarely spoke of his past at all. Perhaps it was simply another detail he preferred to keep private. That evening, she found him in his study, reading a book of Velkari philosophy by Crystal Light. He looked up with a smile as she entered. "Valene asked something curious today," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "She wondered about your military service." Marcus's expression didn't change, but she felt a brief moment of something. Tension? Caution? It passed so quickly she might have imagined it. I did some basic service when I was younger, he said. Most humans do. Nothing interesting. Just training, really. Why do you ask? Just curious. You never mentioned those days. Because they weren't worth mentioning, Marcus said, closing his book. The only life I care about began the day I met you. He reached across the desk to take her hand, and she felt his familiar warmth through their connection. Whatever shadows might exist in his past, the love he felt for her was absolute and real. Later that night, as Marcus slept beside her, Zarathil found herself wondering about the man she had married. She knew his kindness, his humor, his gentle strength. She knew he loved her completely, but she realized that in 5 years of marriage, she knew almost nothing about the first 30 years of his life. It didn't matter, she told herself. The past was gone. What they had built together was real. Marcus Chen, her gentle husband who grew flowers and fed the poor, was exactly who he appeared to be. She couldn't have imagined how wrong she was. The alarm crystals shrieked across Velkar Prime at dawn, their harmonics cutting through the morning air like broken glass. Zarathil woke instantly, her hand moving to her swollen belly as Marcus sat up beside her. "What is it?" she asked, feeling the urgent telepathic broadcasts flooding through the palace communication networks. Marcus was already reaching for his clothes, his movements quick and efficient. Emergency session in the war room. The outer systems are under attack. They rush through corridors filled with running palace guards and frantic officials. In the great war room, Emperor Thander stood before the massive tactical display, his silver eyes hard with anger. The holographic map showed the Velkari Empire's 12 systems, with 3 of the outer worlds now marked in flashing red. "Report," Thander commanded as his advisors gathered. General Morkith stepped forward, his mental voice grim. "The Kreth Hegemony launched coordinated strikes 6 hours ago. Bioships emerged from dark space without warning. Kethmer, Jelaris, and Valane's station at the mining world have all gone silent." Zarathil gasped. Her sister had been stationed at Kethmer. "Valane? Unknown Highness. We lost contact when their communication crystals were destroyed." Marcus moved to the tactical display, studying the attack patterns with an intensity Zarathil had never seen before. His gentle scholar's demeanor had shifted into something else, focused, analytical, almost predatory. "This isn't random," he said quietly. "Look at the targets. Mining worlds, communication hubs, defensive stations. Someone is cutting your supply lines and isolating your core systems." General Morkith bristled. "We hardly need strategic advice from a flower grower." "Actually, we do." Emperor Thander's voice cut through the tension. "Marcus, what do you see?" Marcus traced lines on the holographic display with his finger. "They're not trying to hold territory. This is preparation for a deeper strike. They want something specific in your core systems." Before anyone could respond, another alarm sounded. A communications officer stepped forward nervously. "Majesty, we're receiving a transmission from the Kreth fleet. They're demanding Princess Zarathil and her unborn child in exchange for stopping the attacks." The room fell silent. Zarathil felt Marcus's hand find hers, his grip strong and protective. "They want the hybrid," Thander said, understanding immediately. "They believe a being with both human adaptability and Velkari telepathic abilities will make the perfect weapon." "Over my dead body," Marcus said, his voice carrying a cold edge that made several advisors step back. "Your body may not be enough," General Morkith replied. "Our forces are already stretched thin. The crystal defense networks in the outer systems are being systematically destroyed. Without them, we cannot coordinate our fleets effectively." As if summoned by his words, another officer approached with worse news. General long-range sensors detect additional ships approaching from the Harkoni Syndicate. They're not Kreth allies. This appears to be a separate force. Marcus went very still. Harkoni? Criminal smugglers and mercenaries, Morkith explained. They operate in the lawless regions between empires. Why they would risk attacking Velkari space is unclear. But Marcus was staring at the display with an expression Zarathil had never seen before. Fear? Recognition? How many ships? 16 vessels, including 3 battlecruisers. They're broadcasting on human frequencies, demanding. They're asking for someone called the Ghost. The room erupted in confusion, but Zarathil was watching her husband. Marcus had gone pale, his jaw set in a way she had never seen. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. That's what they used to call me. What? Thainder's mental voice cut through the chaos. Marcus looked up, meeting his father-in-law's silver eyes. The Harkoni want me. Whatever they're telling you about ghosts or past operations, they want Marcus Chen, which means they know who I used to be. Who you used to be? Zarathil whispered before Marcus could answer. The palace shook. The inner defensive shields were taking fire. Through the tall windows of the war room, they could see Kreth bioships descending through the atmosphere like living nightmares. The creatures were massive, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent weapon systems. The palace is surrounded, an officer reported. Both Kreth and Harkoni forces are converging on our position. Our own fleets are still hours away from reaching us. Emperor Thainder stood silent for a moment, processing the tactical situation. Then he turned to Marcus with an expression of desperate hope. You see patterns others miss. You understand strategy. Can you get my daughter and grandchild to safety? Marcus was quiet for several heartbeats, his brown eyes calculating distances, forces, possibilities. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that had never been there before. The crystal communication chamber in the lower levels has independent power systems. If I can reach it, I can contact your scattered fleets and coordinate a defense. But I'll need access to the palace's restricted areas. You have it, Thainder said immediately. Anything you need. And I need you to trust me, even when what I do doesn't look like the Marcus you know. The Emperor nodded gravely. Save my family. Marcus turned to Zarathil, taking her face in his hands. For a moment, the cold strategist disappeared, and she saw her gentle husband again. I need you to go to our private chambers and wait for me there. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in except me. Marcus, what's happening? Who were you before you came here? Another explosion rocked the palace. Closer this time. Through their mental bond, Zarathil felt something she had never sensed from Marcus before, a vast, dark ocean of knowledge and experience that he had somehow kept hidden from her for 5 years. Someone I hoped I'd never have to be again, he said softly. But someone who can protect you. He kissed her gently, then turned to address the room with commanding authority. General Morkith, pull your remaining forces back to defensive positions around the communication chamber. Don't try to hold the outer courtyards. Let them think they're winning. You cannot give orders to Volcari forces. Morkith protested. I just did, Marcus replied, his voice carrying steel. Emperor, your choice. Thainder looked at this human who had somehow transformed from gentle gardener to military commander in the space of minutes. Do as he says. As Marcus strode from the war room, Zarathil caught a glimpse of something that chilled her blood. Her husband was smiling, but it wasn't the warm, gentle smile she knew. This smile was cold, calculating, and absolutely deadly. She was beginning to realize that the man she had loved for 5 years might be someone else entirely, and she wasn't sure whether to be terrified or hopeful about what that might mean for their survival. Zarathil waited in their private chambers as explosions echoed through the palace. The sounds of battle grew closer with each passing minute. She pressed her back against the locked door, one hand on her belly, trying to calm the child, who seemed to sense the danger around them. Through the tall windows, she could see Kreth bioships landing in the palace courtyards. The organic vessels pulsed with sickly light as insectoid warriors poured out of their living hulls. In the distance, the angular ships of the Hakone Syndicate hung in the sky like metal predators. She tried to reach Marcus through their mental bond, but found only a strange emptiness where his gentle presence should be. It was as if he had somehow closed off parts of his mind that she had never known existed. The door chimed softly. Marcus's personal entry code. Zarathil opened it to find her husband carrying a large metal case she had never seen before. His clothes were different too. Dark, practical garments that seemed designed for movement and concealment rather than comfort. "We need to go," he said, setting the case on their bed and opening it. Zarathil stared in shock at the contents. Weapons, but not the elegant energy weapons favored by Valkyrie forces. These were crude-looking human firearms, along with devices she didn't recognize. Marcus moved through them with practiced familiarity, checking mechanisms and loading ammunition. "Marcus, where did these come from?" "I've maintained several equipment caches throughout the palace over the years," he said without looking up. "Standard operating procedure for deep cover assignments." "Deep cover assignments?" The words hit her like ice water. "What are you talking about?" Marcus paused in his preparations, finally meeting her silver eyes with his brown ones. She saw pain there, but also a hard determination she had never witnessed before. "I wasn't originally sent here as a diplomat, Zarathil. I was sent as a spy." The words hung in the air between them. Zarathil felt the world shifting beneath her feet. "When the Valkyrie agreed to consider an alliance with Earth, my government wanted to understand your capabilities, your weaknesses, your technology. I was assigned to gather intelligence from within your court." "For 5 years?" she whispered. "The mission was supposed to last 6 months. Then I met you." Marcus finished loading a weapon and turned to face her fully. "Everything changed when I met you. So our marriage, our child." Zarathil couldn't finish the sentence. "Was real," Marcus said firmly. "Whatever this started as, what we have is real. I love you, Zarathil. I love our child, and I will kill anyone who tries to hurt you." The cold certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, she found it oddly comforting. This wasn't the gentle scholar she had married, but it was still Marcus. She could feel his love for her, burning like a star at the core of his being. "Who are you really?" she asked. "Commander Marcus Chun, Earth Special Operations Division. Before my diplomatic assignment, I spent 12 years fighting colonial insurgents in the Proxima system. The Harkoni Syndicate used to run weapons to the rebels. They knew me by reputation." Marcus shouldered the equipment pack and moved to their window, looking out at the battle raging in the courtyards below. "They called me the Ghost because my teams could disappear into hostile territory for months, gathering intelligence and sabotaging enemy operations without being detected." "Is Marcus Chun even your real name?" "It is now," he said simply. "The man who lived that life before coming here. He was someone I needed to be then, but he's not who I want to be anymore." Another explosion shook the palace. Marcus checked his weapons one final time, then moved to a section of their chamber wall that Zarathil had never paid attention to before. He pressed a hidden panel, revealing a narrow maintenance corridor. "How long have you known about that passage?" she asked. "Since our 2nd week of marriage. I've memorized every corridor, every security system, every potential escape route in this palace." Old habits. They moved through the narrow space, Marcus leading with confident steps despite the darkness. Zarathil realized that her husband had been preparing for this possibility for years, even while living peacefully as a diplomat and father-to-be. "The botanical gardens," she said suddenly. "Those weren't just plants, were they?" "Some were. The sunflowers, the vegetables for your people. Those were real. But yes, I also cultivated several Earth species that produce specific chemical compounds when activated. Pheromones that disrupt Kreth bioship coordination systems, for example. They emerged into the palace's communication chamber, where Emperor Thander and General Morkith waited anxiously. Thander looked at his daughter with concern, then at Marcus with new understanding. "How bad is our situation?" Marcus asked, moving to the tactical displays with professional efficiency. "Bad," Morkith replied grudgingly. "The Kreth have taken the outer palace. The Hakoni are demanding we surrender you, or they'll join the Kreth assault. Our defense forces are scattered." Marcus studied the displays for several minutes, his mind clearly processing information at a speed that impressed even the Valkyrie military officers. When he spoke, it was with the voice of command. "General, activate the emergency beacon. Broadcast on frequency 247.3. Encryption pattern Gamma 7. "That's a human military frequency," Morkith said in surprise. "Exactly." Within minutes, the chamber filled with an unexpected sound. Human voices speaking in rapid coded language. Marcus responded with equal fluency, issuing orders and receiving reports. "Dragon 7, this is Gardner. Execute harvest protocol. All units, your flowers are blooming." Zarathil watched in amazement as her gentle husband coordinated what was clearly a massive military operation. Through the chamber's windows, she could see strange things beginning to happen in the palace gardens. The earth plants that Marcus had so carefully tended for 5 years were releasing clouds of barely visible pollen into the air. "What's happening?" she asked. "Every human diplomat in Valkyrie space has been preparing for this scenario," Marcus explained while continuing to coordinate the response. "We knew the Kreth would eventually try something like this. My botanical work wasn't just about growing food. It was about creating a biological weapon system that could disable their bioships." On the tactical display, they could see the Kreth vessels beginning to falter. The massive bioships were losing coordination, their living hulls showing signs of distress as they were exposed to the engineered pheromones. "Impossible," General Morkith breathed. "You've been planning this for 5 years?" "Longer," Marcus replied grimly. "My people think in decades, not years. We've been preparing for the possibility of Kreth expansion since first contact." "But you're supposed to be the primitive species," Thander said in wonder. Marcus looked at his father-in-law with a smile that held no warmth. "We let you think that. It's easier to make plans when your enemies underestimate you." Through the communication system, reports continued to flood in. Human operatives throughout Valkyrie space were emerging from their diplomatic cover to coordinate strikes against Kreth forces. The supposedly primitive Earth species was revealing itself to be anything but helpless. "The Harkoni ships are breaking off," an officer reported. "They're fleeing the system." "Cowards," Marcus said with satisfaction. "They wanted to capture the Ghost, but they're not stupid enough to face a full Earth Special Operations response." As the immediate crisis began to subside, Zarathil found herself staring at the man she had married. Marcus Chun, gentle gardener and philosopher, had revealed himself to be a military commander orchestrating a galaxy-spanning intelligence operation. "How much of what I knew about you was real?" she asked quietly. Marcus turned to her, and for the first time since the attack began, his expression softened. "My love for you. My joy at our child, my happiness in our life together. All of that was real. Everything else," he shrugged. "Everything else was just a job. And now? Now we see if you can love a man who isn't what you thought he was." The final battle lasted 6 hours. From the palace communication chamber, Zarathil watched her husband coordinate a military response that spanned 12 star systems. Human operatives emerged from positions they had held for years, revealing the true scope of Earth's intelligence network throughout Valkyrie space. The Kreth bioships, confused and sickened by the engineered pheromones from Marcus's gardens, became easy targets for Valkyrie defense forces. The Harkoni mercenaries fled when they realized they faced not one retired operative, but an entire Earth Special Operations Division. Status report. Marcus spoke into his communication device as the last enemy ships retreated. All Kreth forces destroyed or retreating, Commander. Harkoni fleet has jumped to hyperspace. Valkyrie casualties minimal. Our cover is blown, but the mission parameters have changed anyway. Marcus looked at Emperor Thander, who had been listening to everything with growing amazement. Majesty, we need to talk. 2 hours later, the palace war room hosted a very different kind of meeting. Earth's true ambassador, Admiral Sarah Chung, Marcus's sister, appeared via holographic projection. The family resemblance was clear, though she wore the insignia of Earth's deepest military command. Your Majesty, Admiral Chun said formally, I apologize for the deception, but Earth felt it necessary to understand the true nature of any potential alliance before committing to formal treaties. Emperor Thander's mental voice carried a mixture of anger and grudging respect. You've had spies throughout my empire for 5 years. Cultural attaches, Admiral Chun corrected smoothly, who became genuinely committed to the welfare of your people. That wasn't part of the original mission plan. Marcus stood beside Zaratho, still wearing his tactical gear, but with his weapons set aside. What she means is that we were supposed to gather intelligence and leave. Instead, we found something worth protecting. The question now, Admiral Chung continued, is whether our peoples can build a real alliance based on truth instead of mutual deception. General Morkith spoke for the first time since the battle ended. Your technology, your biological weapons, your coordination abilities. How much of your species' capability have you been hiding? Most of it, Marcus answered honestly. Humans learned long ago that appearing weak while preparing for strength is the best way to survive in a hostile universe. But you genuinely helped our people, Thander said. The food distribution programs, the medical aid, the educational initiatives, those weren't part of your intelligence mission. No, Marcus agreed. Those were because we came to care about you. All of us did. Every human operative in Valkyrie space reported the same thing. Your people deserve protection, not exploitation. Admiral Chun nodded. Which brings us to our proposal. The Kreth will return, probably with allies. They want Princess Zaraithal and her child because they recognize what we've also discovered, the combination of human adaptability and Valkyrie telepathic abilities represents something new and powerful. Zarathul placed her hand on her belly, feeling their child move restlessly inside her. What are you suggesting? A real alliance, Marcus said. Not the limited defense pact we originally negotiated, but a genuine partnership. Earth will share our military technology and strategic knowledge. In return, the Valkyrie share your crystal technology and telepathic networks. Together, Admiral Chan added, our combined capabilities would make us the strongest alliance in this galactic region. Strong enough to protect ourselves and others from threats like the Kreth. Emperor Thander was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications. Finally, he spoke directly to Marcus. You could have taken what you learned about our weaknesses and used it against us. Instead, you chose to protect us. Why? Marcus looked at Zarathil, then at the Emperor, who had become like a father to him. Because strength, without compassion, is just tyranny. And because I found something here worth more than any mission briefing. Your family, Thanger said with understanding. My home, Marcus corrected. That evening, as cleanup crews worked to repair battle damage throughout the palace, Marcus and Zarathil walked through his gardens. Many of the earth plants had been damaged in the fighting, their chemical defenses having served their purpose but left them weakened. Will you replant them? Zarathil asked. The ones that were weapons? No. But the sunflowers, the vegetables, the ones that were just meant to grow and feed people. Yes. Those deserved to flourish. They sat on the stone bench where they had spent so many quiet hours over the past 5 years. In the distance, work crews were installing new Earth communication equipment alongside Valkyrie crystal networks, the first visible sign of their people's new alliance. I keep thinking about the man I married, Zarathil said finally, wondering how much of him was real. All of it, Marcus said quietly. The spy, the soldier, the gardener, the husband, they're all me. The difference is that now you know about all of them. It doesn't frighten you? Showing me who you really are? Marcus took her hand, intertwining their fingers. Terrifies me. But hiding from you frightened me more. Through their mental bond, Zarathil felt the truth of his words. The vast ocean of knowledge and experience she had sensed during the battle was still there. But now she could also feel the genuine love that had grown over their years together. He had been a spy, yes, but he had also become truly devoted to her and their life together. The baby is due soon, she said. What kind of world will they grow up in? A safer one, I hope. One where they can choose to be gardeners or warriors, diplomats or scholars, without having to hide what they are. Admiral Chun's ships departed 3 days later, but not before signing formal alliance accords that would bind Earth and the Valkyrie Empire in mutual defense and cooperation. Marcus retained his position as cultural liaison, though his role was now openly acknowledged as including security coordination. The night after the signing ceremony, as they lay together in their chambers, Zarathil felt their child moving strongly inside her. They're going to be born into interesting times, she murmured. The best people usually are, Marcus replied. Besides, with your telepathic gifts and human stubbornness, they'll be able to handle anything the galaxy throws at them. Will you teach them about Earth? Everything I know. And you'll teach them about the Valkyrie. They'll be citizens of both worlds. As Zarathil drifted towards sleep, she reflected on the strange path that had brought them to this moment. She had fallen in love with a gentle gardener who turned out to be a deadly operative. She had married a spy who had genuinely become devoted to her people's welfare. She carried the child of a man who was simultaneously the most dangerous and most gentle person she had ever known. In the gardens outside their window, Earth sunflowers grew beside Valkyrie crystal blooms, their roots intertwining in the soil. It seemed like a good metaphor for the future they were building together. The alien princess had indeed believed her human husband was harmless. She had been spectacularly wrong about his capabilities, but completely right about his heart. And that, perhaps, was what mattered most in the end. Their child kicked once more, as if agreeing, before settling into peaceful rest. In the morning, there would be new challenges, new worlds to explore, new threats to face. But tonight, the dangerous man and the telepathic princess held each other close, their love having survived the revelation of truth and emerged stronger for it. The galaxy would never again underestimate humanity. And that suited Marcus Chun just fine.